A well-crafted city can turn a good story into an unforgettable epic. Have you ever wondered what it takes to build such a city, one that feels truly alive? Well, this guide is all you're going to need to craft fantastical cities that go beyond just being bland settings for your story. They become iconic and integral characters in your narrative, places you want to visit over and over again. In the context of world building, a city isn't just a collection of buildings and streets. It's a complex ecosystem influenced by history, geography, politics, economy, and culture. It's where your characters' lives unfold, where heroes rise, villains scheme, and every street has a story to tell. Imagine this: a city where colossal spires pierce the clouds, vibrant marketplaces teem with exotic goods from far-off lands, and shadowy alleys whisper secrets of ancient times. It's a place where magical energies hum in the air, where diverse cultures intersect, and every corner holds the promise of adventure. Sounds exciting, right? But many writers struggle to create cities that actually feel this way. They get overwhelmed by the sheer amount of detail required, leading to cities that feel incomplete or underdeveloped. In this video, we'll break down the essentials of city world building in fantasy. We'll explore historical and cultural context, the impact of geography, and delve into city planning and architecture. But we won't stop there. We'll also look at economic and social structures, infrastructure, and defense mechanisms. By the end, you'll have a treasure trove of ideas and techniques to craft cities that captivate and inspire. Cities in the real world are shaped by a multitude of historical and cultural influences, and this should be no different in your fantasy world. To create a city that feels truly alive, you need to embed it within a rich history and cultural context. Let's start with a big idea. Your city's past is its present. What do I mean by that? It simply means that historical events and cultural shifts shape how your city looks, functions, and feels today. From ancient empires to recent revolutions, every layer of history adds depth to your city. Imagine a city built on the ruins of an ancient civilization, where the crumbling remnants of the past peek through the modern structures. Or consider a city that has evolved through the ages, reflecting the architectural styles and cultural influences of various eras and conquerors. These layers of history can make your city feel real and lived in. One of the biggest challenges new fantasy writers face is making their cities feel like they have a history. They often overlook the cultural and historical context that gives cities their unique character. This can result in settings that feel generic and uninspired. Here's a first step to the solution. Draw inspiration from real-world cities that have rich histories and diverse cultures. Look at how cities like Rome, Istanbul, and Kyoto have been shaped by centuries of events and cultural exchanges. Think about how these influences can manifest in your city's architecture, customs, festivals, and daily life. For example, a city that was once a major trade hub might have a blend of architectural styles from different cultures, bustling markets that have been in operation for centuries, and annual festivals that celebrate its mercantile past. Or a city that has faced multiple invasions might have layers of defensive walls, each built in a different era with distinct architectural features. Remember, your city's culture is not static. It evolves with time, influenced by migration, trade, conquest, and innovation. Incorporate these dynamic elements to create a city that feels like a living, breathing entity. Now let's add another layer: myths and legends. Every great city in a fantasy world has its own mythology, stories of gods and heroes, epic battles, and legendary events. These myths shape the identity of your city, influencing everything from its festivals to its architecture. Imagine a city that celebrates an annual festival to honor a mythical hero who saved the city from a dragon centuries ago. Statues and murals throughout the city depict this hero's legendary deeds. Or a city where the architecture reflects the myths of ancient gods with temples and monuments dedicated to their honor. By grounding your city in a rich historical, cultural, and mythological context, you make it more than just a functional stage. It becomes a vital part of your narrative. Geography is the silent architect of your city. The natural features surrounding and within your city shape its development, economy, culture, and even its defense strategies. In a fantasy world, these elements become even more critical as they often interact with magical or fantastical elements. Let's start with natural features. Rivers, mountains, forests, and seas are more than just scenic backgrounds. They dictate the placement of your city, its layout, and its economic activities. For example, a city built along a river might thrive on trade, using the river as a major transportation route. Conversely, a city nestled in the mountains might focus on mining and defense, with natural barriers protecting it from invasions. Consider how these natural features affect daily life. A city by the sea might have a culture centered around fishing and seafaring, with markets filled with fresh seafood and tales of sea monsters and pirates. In contrast, a city in a dense forest might rely on hunting and woodcraft, with a society skilled in using and respecting the forest's resources. Climate and resources play another crucial role. The climate determines the types of crops that can be grown, the architecture of the buildings, and even the clothing people wear. A city in a cold, mountainous region might have sturdy, insulated buildings and a diet rich in preserved foods. Meanwhile, a city in a tropical climate could feature open-air markets, lightweight clothing, and a cuisine full of fresh fruits and spices. Resources dictate the economic basis of your city. Is there a rich vein of ore beneath the city? Expect a thriving mining industry with skilled blacksmiths and traders. Is the land fertile? Agriculture will be the backbone of the economy, with markets bustling with produce and festivals celebrating the harvest. Now let's talk about strategic importance. A city at a crossroads of major trade routes will become a hub of commerce, attracting merchants from distant lands and fostering cultural exchanges. On the other hand, a city on a high plateau might serve as a formidable military stronghold, its elevation providing a defensive advantage. In history, cities like Constantinople thrived due to their strategic locations, controlling key trade routes and being fortified against invasions. In fantasy settings, the interaction between natural features and magical elements can add even more layers to your city's geography. Imagine a city built around a magical spring that grants eternal youth, or one protected by an enchanted forest that repels invaders. These fantastical elements can turn geographical features into powerful narrative tools, influencing not only the city's development, but also its stories and legends. Think of Rivendell from The Lord of the Rings, where the natural beauty and the hidden valleys' magic create a sanctuary for its inhabitants. When designing the geography and location of your city, always think about how these elements shape its character and influence its inhabitants' lives. For instance, the elite might live on elevated ground with the best views and defenses, while the lower classes reside in flood-prone or less desirable areas. One of the key secrets to crafting a captivating city lies in not looking at each element in isolation. You always need to consider how those elements affect one another. Now, if you found anything useful in the video so far, please consider giving it a like to help me grow the channel. Thank you. City layout and architecture are the skeleton and skin of your city. They shape not only its physical appearance, but also its functionality and the experiences of its inhabitants. A well-designed city layout and distinctive architectural styles can make your fantasy city truly stand out. Let's begin with city planning. Different layouts serve different purposes and reflect the history and culture of your city. Consider three primary types: grid systems, organic growth, and planned cities. Grid systems are orderly and efficient, often used in cities designed for ease of navigation and expansion. Ancient Roman cities and many modern cities like New York use grid systems. Grid systems also facilitate defense and trade by making it easier to move goods and troops. Organic growth-based cities develop naturally over time, resulting in winding streets and irregular layouts. Such cities often feel more lived in and historic. Think of medieval European towns or older sections of cities like London and Paris. Organic growth can lead to hidden pathways and secret areas, adding layers of mystery and intrigue to your city. Planned cities are meticulously designed from the ground up, often reflecting the ideals or ambitions of their founders. Examples include Washington, D.C. and Brasilia. Planned cities can embody utopian ideals or strategic objectives, showcasing the vision of their creators. Architectural styles then reflect the culture, technology, and history of your city. They tell a story about the people who live there and their values. Incorporate elements from different cultures that have influenced your city over time. For instance, Gothic cathedrals, Islamic minarets, and Eastern pagodas can all coexist, reflecting a multitude of cultural influences. The materials and construction techniques available will shape the buildings. A city with advanced technology might have soaring skyscrapers or intricate machinery, while a more primitive society might rely on stone and wood. Buildings from different eras can coexist, showing the layers of your city's history. Think about how historical events have shaped the architectural landscape. For example, a city that has been repeatedly conquered might have architectural styles from each era of occupation, telling a visual story of its past. Now, unique structures can become iconic symbols of your city. They provide focal points and enhance the city's character. In a fantasy setting, a tower where mages study and practice their arts could be a central feature. Architectural innovations can add a layer of uniqueness to your city. In a fantasy world, this could be as simple as structures that defy gravity, either through magic or advanced technology. Floating buildings could signify the elite's residence, symbolizing their elevated status both literally and metaphorically. Another opposite example would be underground cities where entire communities are built below the surface, providing unique challenges and opportunities for storytelling. These cities might adapt to their environment with bioluminescent lighting, subterranean farming, and advanced ventilation systems. When designing your city's layout and architecture, think about how these elements work together to create a cohesive and engaging environment. The streets should not just be pathways, but spaces where stories unfold and characters interact. The lifeblood of any city is its economy. The economic activities within your city shape its prosperity, culture, and social dynamics. Let's start with the economic basis of your city. What drives its economy? Is it trade, agriculture, industry, or something more fantastical like magic? Trade-based economies thrive on commerce and the exchange of goods. Cities located along major trade routes by the sea or at crossroads often become bustling trade hubs. Agricultural economies rely on fertile land and favorable climate. These cities might have vast farmlands surrounding them, with seasonal festivals celebrating the harvest. Industrial economies are driven by manufacturing and production. Such cities are often characterized by factories, workshops, and a bustling workforce. The advent of new technologies can lead to rapid growth, but also social challenges like pollution and labor disputes. Magic-based economies are unique to fantasy settings. In these cities, magical resources or abilities could be central to the economy. Think of a city that exports enchanted items, where spellcasting services are a major industry, or where magical energy sources power the city's infrastructure. This can add an extra layer of intrigue and complexity to your world. Next, consider the impact of trade routes. Cities along significant trade routes often become wealthy and culturally diverse. The constant flow of merchants and goods introduces new ideas, technologies, and cultural practices. However, it can also bring challenges like competition, corruption, and crime. Marketplaces and guilds often play a crucial role in the economic life of a city. Markets are not just places of commerce, but also social hubs where people gather. Guilds, on the other hand, can control specific trades and wield significant political power. Guilds might set prices, maintain trade standards, train apprentices, and even influence city policies through lobbying or direct political involvement. But be aware of economic fluctuations as well, such as booms and recessions that can shape your city's history and present. A city might experience a golden age due to a lucrative trade, or suffer through a depression because of resource depletion. Economic booms can lead to urban expansion and cultural flourishing, while recessions can result in social unrest and political upheaval. These fluctuations can create dynamic and evolving storylines. Black markets and illegal trade then add another layer of complexity. Even in the most regulated cities, there are almost always underground economies. These can be sources of tension and conflict, revealing the darker side of your city. Illegal trade can involve anything from contraband goods and banned magical artifacts to underground fighting rings and smuggling operations. The social and political structures of your city shape its very soul. These elements determine how your city's inhabitants live, work, and interact. Let's start with governance. The form of governance in your city profoundly impacts daily life and societal organization. Consider these common models: monarchies, councils, and theocracies. In monarchies, a single ruler, often hereditary, holds significant power. Monarchies can provide stability but might also lead to tyranny or power struggles. Think of cities ruled by kings or queens where royal decrees shape the lives of the populace. Royal courts can be centers of power, intrigue, and ceremonial events. When a council governs the city, power is often distributed among a group of leaders. These are typically elected or represent different factions. Councils can encourage diverse viewpoints but might struggle with indecision or internal conflicts. Consider a city with a council of merchants, guild leaders, and nobles, each vying for influence. Lastly, in theocracies, religious leaders govern, often claiming divine right or guidance. Theocracies can unify citizens under a common faith but might also impose strict religious laws. Social hierarchy within your city, on the other hand, defines the division of neighborhoods and social classes. Consider the following aspects. First, let's talk about noble quarters. These are areas where the elite reside, often marked by luxurious homes and guarded estates. Noble quarters can be centers of political power and intrigue. Paths to nobility might include military achievements, marriages, or royal favor. Next, we have merchant districts. These are bustling areas where trade and commerce flourish, home to prosperous traders and skilled artisans. Such districts are hubs of economic activity and cultural exchange. Merchants might wield significant influence and form powerful trade associations. Then we have the slums and lower-class neighborhoods. In those regions, the poor live, often in overcrowded and unsanitary conditions. These areas can be rife with crime and social unrest, but also foster a sense of community and resilience. Social mobility might be limited, but opportunities for advancement could exist through guilds, military service, or patronage. Economic activities shape the routines of different classes and create distinct social dynamics. Consider these scenarios. In a trade-based city, merchants might hold significant influence, and marketplaces become central social hubs. In an industrial city, factory workers and labor unions could play critical roles, with daily life revolving around shifts and production cycles. In a magic-based city, spellcasters and enchanters might form an elite class, with magical services integrated into everyday activities. On top of all this, political intrigue and power struggles can add depth and complexity to your city. Here are a few ways of how to incorporate this. First, we have rival factions. These are competing groups within the government or society that can drive conflict and plot twists. Imagine guilds conspiring against the ruling council or nobles plotting to overthrow the monarchy. Then there is corruption and reform. Consider a city where a new leader aims to cleanse a corrupt bureaucracy, facing resistance from entrenched interests. Lastly, don't forget about hidden agendas. Characters with secret motives can influence political outcomes and create unexpected turns in the story. Think of advisors with hidden loyalties or spies manipulating events behind the scenes. Infrastructure and public services are the backbone of any thriving city. They ensure that the city runs smoothly and that the needs of its inhabitants are met. A well-designed infrastructure can enhance the quality of life and contribute to the city's growth and sustainability. Let's start with transportation. The city's transportation systems, such as roads, bridges, canals, and magical portals, are crucial for movement and trade. Well-maintained roads and sturdy bridges are essential for easy travel and commerce, connecting different parts of the city and facilitating the movement of goods and people. Think of the intricate network of roads and bridges in ancient Rome that connected the vast empire. In cities located near water, canals can serve as major transportation routes. Consider the canals of Venice, which are used for both transport and trade, creating a unique cityscape. And in a fantasy setting, magical portals can provide instant travel between distant locations, adding an exciting element to your city's infrastructure. Next, let's look at utilities. The provision of essential services such as water supply, sewage, waste management, and energy sources is equally vital for a city's functionality and health. Access to clean water is crucial. Ancient cities often relied on aqueducts, wells, and cisterns. For instance, the aqueducts of ancient Rome were engineering marvels that provided fresh water to urban centers. Effective systems for waste disposal and sewage are necessary to maintain public health. Think of the sophisticated sewage systems in ancient Indus Valley cities like Mohenjo-Daro. In a fantasy world, energy might come from traditional sources like wood and coal, or more fantastical ones like magical crystals or enchanted flames. Consider a city powered by a central magical source that provides heat and light to all its buildings. Now, public buildings and institutions are the heart of community life. Schools can range from small local academies to grand universities. Access to medical care and public health services is obviously essential for any city. It's also important, though, to consider efforts to combat diseases and promote health. These can include vaccination drives, public baths, and clean water initiatives. Think of ancient Rome's public baths and their role in promoting hygiene. But leaving medical care behind us, don't forget about libraries as repositories of knowledge and culture. They can be small community libraries or vast collections of ancient texts. Consider the Great Library of Alexandria, a center of learning in the ancient world. Now, there is no doubt that innovative infrastructure can set your city apart. In a fantasy setting, this might include magical energy sources or enchanted transportation systems. Think of flying carpets, teleportation stones, or enchanted carriages that move without horses. Efficient transportation systems enhance trade and daily life, while utilities and public buildings contribute to the well-being and development of the population. Now, if you are interested in more of these types of deep dives, then make sure to subscribe to the channel for regular videos about storytelling, world building, and fantasy writing. Defense and security are crucial elements in ensuring the safety and stability of your city. They protect the inhabitants from external threats and maintain internal order. The defensive structures of your city, such as walls, fortresses, and watchtowers, are the first line of defense against invaders. Walls are a common defensive feature, providing a physical barrier that protects the city from external threats. Think of the Great Wall of China, which was built to protect against invasions. Fortresses can serve as strongholds where the city's defenders can regroup and mount a counterattack. Consider the fortified castles of medieval Europe, which served as both residences and defensive structures. Watchtowers are strategic points for surveillance, allowing defenders to spot and respond to threats from a distance. In a fantasy setting, these defensive structures can be enhanced with magical defenses. Imagine a city with walls reinforced by enchantments that make them impervious to siege weapons, or a fortress protected by a barrier that repels intruders. Next, let's discuss law enforcement. Law and order in a city are usually maintained by guards, soldiers, and magical protectors. Guards patrol the streets, enforce laws, and protect citizens from crime. Soldiers defend the city from external threats and can be called upon during times of war. In a fantasy world, magical protectors such as enchanted statues, golems, or summoned creatures can aid in maintaining security. Different law enforcement models can exist in your city, from a city watch funded by the government to private enforcers hired by wealthy citizens or powerful guilds. Consider a city where the city watch is responsible for general law enforcement, but private enforcers handle security for the elite. Additionally, law enforcement models from history or fantasy literature can offer inspiration. For example, the Praetorian Guard of ancient Rome served as both protectors and political enforcers, while the Night's Watch in Game of Thrones took on a more isolated, defense-oriented role. Internal conflicts and safety within the city also need to be addressed. How does the city handle crime, riots, or rebellions? What measures are in place to ensure the safety of its inhabitants? A well-organized system for conflict resolution can prevent minor disputes from escalating into major conflicts. Crime prevention strategies such as community policing or surveillance systems can help reduce crime rates and increase the citizens' sense of security. Surveillance systems, whether magical or technological, play a crucial role in monitoring and maintaining order. Surveillance systems enhance both defense and law enforcement by providing timely information and ensuring accountability. Always consider the potential drawbacks or challenges of these systems as well. Magical defenses might require constant maintenance or rare materials, while surveillance systems could raise privacy concerns among the populace. Never just focus on what an element brings to the table, always consider their cost as well. Culture and society heavily contribute to the heart and soul of your city. They define how people live, interact, and celebrate their shared identity. Let's begin with traditions and festivals. Traditions are the customs and practices that have been passed down through generations. They can be daily rituals, annual celebrations, or unique customs that define the city's character. Imagine a city where every morning begins with a communal sunrise ceremony to honor the gods. Festivals then are larger, more public celebrations that often commemorate historical events, religious observances, or cultural milestones. They can be grand and elaborate, drawing visitors from afar, or they can be small and intimate, focused on local traditions. Consider a city that hosts an annual festival celebrating a mythical hero who saved the city from destruction, complete with parades, feasts, and reenactments. Language and dialects, on the other hand, play a crucial role in communication and culture. Language is a powerful tool that reflects the city's history, trade connections, and cultural influences. In a diverse city, multiple languages and dialects may coexist, creating a huge variety of communication. Think of a bustling marketplace where merchants haggle in various tongues, each adding to the city's vibrant atmosphere. Dialects can signify different social or regional groups within the city. They can be a source of pride, a marker of identity, or even a barrier to communication. Imagine the elite speaking a refined dialect while the common folk use a more colloquial version. We cannot ignore religion and beliefs either, though, especially how they influence daily life and social interactions. Temples, churches, and other places of worship are often central to a city's layout and culture. They serve as community hubs, places of solace, and centers of power. Daily rites and significant life events are often marked by religious ceremonies. These can range from public festivals to private rituals, each adding to the city's cultural fabric. Cultural fusion can occur when different cultures within the city blend and clash. Different cultural groups might share traditions, languages, and customs, creating a unique, hybrid culture. Think of a city where Eastern and Western architectural styles merge, creating a skyline of pagodas and spires. Don't shy away from cultural clashes, though. These can lead to tension and conflict, yes, but also to growth and change. Such interactions can drive plot lines and character development. Imagine a city where old and new beliefs collide, leading to debates, reforms, or even revolutions. To truly capture the essence of your fantasy city, it's essential to delve into the everyday lives of its inhabitants. Let's start with daily routines. Daily routines differ significantly across social classes and occupations. Rich and poor, guild members, and outcasts all have unique schedules and activities that define their daily existence. Imagine the bustling mornings in a merchant district with traders setting up their stalls, apprentices running errands, and the smell of fresh bread from the bakeries. Contrast this with the quiet, methodical routines of scholars in a grand library or the rigorous training of soldiers in the barracks. Think about the lower classes too, factory workers hurrying to their shifts, street urchins scouring for scraps, and craftsmen honing their skills in small, dimly lit workshops. Entertainment and leisure activities also play a crucial role in defining city life. From theaters and sports arenas to festivals and public gatherings, these spaces provide a glimpse into the culture and values of the city. Consider a city where street performers entertain crowds in the public squares, gladiators battle in grand arenas inspired by Roman traditions, and bards tell tales in bustling taverns. These activities offer a break from daily routines and a chance for citizens to socialize and unwind. We cannot ignore what people eat either, of course. Food and cuisine are integral parts of daily life, reflecting the city's resources, trade connections, and cultural influences. Markets filled with exotic spices, fresh produce, and local delicacies create a vibrant food scene. Think of a bustling marketplace where you can find everything from freshly caught fish to exotic fruits brought by distant traders. Dining customs, from street food to lavish feasts, can tell a lot about the city's social fabric and traditions. How does food vary between the noble quarters and the slums? Are there communal meals that bring different classes together, or are dining practices strictly segregated? Street life in general, with its vendors, performers, and everyday interactions, adds vibrancy and color to your city. Picture a lively street market with vendors calling out their wares, children playing, and neighbors chatting. These interactions bring a sense of community and liveliness to the city. City life isn't just about bustling markets and grand festivals. Every city faces challenges and problems that shape its development and the lives of its inhabitants. First, let's talk about urban issues. Overcrowding is a common problem in growing cities. As populations swell, housing becomes scarce and living conditions can deteriorate. Imagine narrow, winding streets packed with people, with families crammed into small apartments or makeshift homes. Historical examples like Victorian London or modern-day Mumbai can illustrate the impact of overcrowding on urban life. Pollution is another significant issue. Factories and workshops might contribute to smog, rivers could be choked with waste, and the constant hustle and bustle might lead to noise pollution. Consider the smog of Industrial Revolution London or the Ganges River pollution as references. Crime and poverty often accompany overcrowding and pollution. In areas where resources are scarce, crime can become a means of survival. Picture the shadowy alleyways where illicit deals take place, or the desperate faces of those struggling to make ends meet. Look at New York in the early 20th century or contemporary Rio de Janeiro for real-world parallels. Now consider conflict and tension. Cities are melting pots of different cultures, beliefs, and social classes, which can sometimes lead to friction. Class struggles might arise, with the wealthy elite clashing with the impoverished masses. Think of protests in the streets, with banners flying and voices raised in unison against perceived injustices. The French Revolution or modern-day protests in cities like Hong Kong offer vivid examples. Political rivalries can also create tension. Factions within the city might vie for power, each with their own agendas and methods. Imagine secret meetings in dimly lit rooms where plans are hatched and alliances are formed or broken. Historical examples like the Medici family in Florence or the rival factions in Game of Thrones' King's Landing can illustrate this well. Environmental issues shouldn't be overlooked either. Resource depletion can have a significant impact on a city's sustainability. If the city relies heavily on a particular resource like wood, water, or magical elements, depletion of these resources can lead to economic and social crises. Historical deforestation in Easter Island or water shortages in modern-day Cape Town provide relevant examples. Natural disasters can pose a serious threat as well. Earthquakes, floods, and storms can cause widespread destruction and test the resilience of the city and its inhabitants. Picture a city built on a fault line where every tremor sends ripples of fear through the populace. Cities like San Francisco or Tokyo that are built in earthquake zones can serve as examples. Finally, let's discuss social movements. In response to these challenges and tensions, social movements and protests can arise. These movements can be a force for change, addressing issues like inequality, corruption, and environmental degradation. Historical movements like the Civil Rights Movement in the US or the recent climate change protests led by groups like Extinction Rebellion can illustrate this. By incorporating these challenges into your narrative, you create a dynamic and realistic city where the struggles and triumphs of its inhabitants drive the story forward. City world building can be complex, so before we get to the end of the video, let's dive into a few practical tips to help you integrate city life into your narrative. First, consider integrating city details into your plot and character development. Cities aren't just backdrops, they're active components of your story. Think about how the city's features influence the plot. Does the labyrinthine layout of the city help or hinder your characters in a chase scene? Does the city's culture affect how your characters interact or resolve conflicts? Next, think about character interactions. The city environment plays a crucial role in shaping how characters interact with each other. Different areas of the city will have different social dynamics. How do characters from different social classes interact in public spaces? How does the atmosphere of a bustling market differ from that of a quiet, affluent neighborhood? Your characters will move through these places and meet the people living there, so it is good to know what awaits them. This way you can consider properly how they would act and react in such environments. While originality and cultural depth are key, make sure to balance everything when it comes to realism and fantastical elements. Too much realism can make your fantasy city feel mundane, while too much fantasy can make it seem disconnected from reality. Consider how everyday life would adapt to magical or fantastical elements. For instance, how does a city with flying carpets manage air traffic? Try to manage the level of detail to avoid overwhelming the narrative. Focus on the most impactful details that enhance the narrative and leave a lasting impression. When describing your city, think about the sensory experiences as well. What sounds fill the air? What scents waft through the markets? What sights capture the eye? These sensory details can make your city feel more tangible and immersive. Also remember to think about how the city's design influences character behavior and relationships. Does the cramped layout of a slum foster close-knit communities, or does it breed tension and conflict? Does the grandeur of a noble district instill pride in its residents or resentment in outsiders? The experience of your characters will be different from being residents of the city themselves to strangers just traveling through. But even the most epic city will be meaningless if your entire world lacks the right foundation. Check out this video here to get the first steps right and follow along through the entire world building fundamental series.